Hello again, everybody. This is Richard Cook here of Wenlin Institute with another exciting experimental video. In this exciting episode, we're going to look at some features of the CDL font editor, one of my favorite toys to play with. And to get started, let's look at this character opened sort of at random. Some of the features that I'm going to show you in this episode are, for the most part, experimental features that may find their way into a future version of Wenlin, but they relate to features that are in your copy of Wenlin, many features that you have in your own copy of Wenlin. So they're not all experimental. They're developments, refinements of existing features, or just undocumented or little-known features of Wenlin's CDL editor. Looking at the stroke lines here in the dictionary entry, we can see that the line begins with the stroke button, which will open up the stroking box. We'll look at that in a second. Then it's followed by a stroke-by-stroke diagram of the character in stroke order, and followed by a button which will show us the CDL. I have more to talk about that in a second. And a new button which gives us a new variant of the character. This is suitable for reuse as a template to create a new variant. You see the variant number has been filled in automatically there. And the last button is if we want to create a clone of this character, we can choose a destination for the clone. A clone is a CDL description that only has one component and no strokes. We'll talk more about clones in the future. At the bottom of the stroke lines, you see there's this curved arrow pointing to the right, down and to the right, and that gives you the 5 types of the 13 strokes. The type of each of the strokes, 3, 5, 3, 5. That's the Pierre, Hungo, Shu Pierre, Hungjago, and so on. The codes for the stroke types. Now you may wonder, what am I talking about? What do those codes mean? Well, let's open up the stroking box and I'll show you quickly what I mean. When we go through the first couple strokes of this character, the first stroke, Pierre stroke, see the P here, that Pierre stroke is a stroke type 3, and the next stroke, which we saw in the CDL, is Hungo, relates to stroke type 5. Then a Shu Pierre stroke, again stroke type 3, and then Hungjago stroke, again stroke 5, and so on. You may be wondering, why are some of these strokes red in the character, and why is there a blue background, and what are these other lines, and so on. And I'll look at each of these features here quickly. The component on the left is in red because that's the radical component, and the red radical checkbox is checked. If we uncheck it, then it becomes blue instead of red. The non-radical components on the right are in blue. And the color scheme is chosen here in the color picker. This is the foreground color, sets it to blue. And the background color is set to white. If we clear the foreground stroking, we can see in the background that there's this light blue form of the character. This actually results from the compare checkbox here being checked, having check the compare checkbox. It's using, in this case, my selection of FreeType Hansa. The MS Song.ttf font is the one that's being used for the background template. We can turn that off and instead use the CDL font itself as the background template. You can see there are slight differences if we display them both at the same time. CDL has a slight different shape, slightly different shape than the MS Song. Let's leave the CDL description as the background for the time being, and we can stroke through the character stroke by stroke. You'll see that the CDL fills in precisely over the background color with the red radical strokes in the foreground, and then with the blue non-radical strokes in the foreground. All right, the next thing we're going to look at is the points. What does the points button do? If I click points here, you're going to see the in the background the XML is now displayed. There's the underlying XML for CDL that we were looking at before. There are two components in the XML, and so there are two components in the editor here, each with control points at the corner. These control points can be dragged to resize the component. And another interesting feature to consider was what happens if you click the strokes button here in the stroke box. Clicking strokes brings the underlying XML down to the stroke level, and you see the XML has become considerably more complicated. No longer does it have just two components, but it has all the components and subcomponents interspersed as XML comments. So this is our first component, which is now an XML comment, and this is the first subcomponent of that first component. And then this is the two underlying strokes of that first subcomponent. They're not comments, they're full XML attributes, XML elements, sorry, each with stroke type and points attributes and some other attributes which we'll discuss later. If we open this up now again in the stroking box and click points again, you can see that the editor now has many more control points. In fact, there's a control point for every one of the bare stroke elements, and not just for each of the elements, but for each of the pairs of points within that element. So let me see if I can make that statement a little more clear. If we click the strokes button again, this strips out the XML comments and leaves just the bare strokes at the bottom level of the CDL description. There are 13 of these lines, these stroke element lines, and so when we open this up again in the stroking box, you can see there are 13 strokes in the character. And we show points. You can see all the different points underlying the different strokes. For example, the PS stroke has 2 points at the extremes. Then the second stroke, Hung Glow, has 3 points, and so on. Now, another interesting thing that we can do, and leave the stroking box for the time being, is if we push the CDL button again, at this time holding down the Shift key, we open up what's called the inline display of the character, inline CDL. And to show you what is meant by inline CDL, if we reveal the codes, you can see there's the underlying XML at the stroke level of CDL. And the Wenlin text editor is actually rendering that XML in order to display the character that you see in line here. So this inline CDL is suitable for interspersing with text. And by the way, all the text that you're seeing here is being rendered using the CDL font, the Roman and the Hansa. Now, let me make this a little bit more interesting. In this case, I'll get rid of the stroke level CDL and open up the stroking box again, and then open up the CDL again. And this time, let's turn the components around. We'll change their relative positions, which creates a new character, I think, which may never have existed before. We're going to put the horn radical on the right instead. Let's open it up and see what it looks like. And adjust the relative proportions a little bit to make it maybe a little more beautiful. But this is a form of the character, which would be a problem for many fonts because such fonts don't really do characters very well. CDL does characters, whether they're invented or rare or common, does them all very, very well. This character form that we just invented has a flat right side, so we probably want to add a points attribute to the top level CDL, and we're going to put a little bit of an indent on the right hand side like that. That improves the display a little bit. Now let's take this description that I just created and bring it to the stroke level, and then let's strip out the XML comments by doing that again, and then let's create an inline form of that character for use. Oh, isn't that interesting? Now we have this rare character, which is also suitable for reuse in a Wenlin document. And I grabbed it there, pasted it into the new document, resized, and there you have it. Toggling the display, lots of XML underlying those two simple little characters. But the mirrored forms of the characters, are now suitable for use, so inline in text, and not stored in the font outside of the document. They're stored right in the document itself. If we wanted to, we could create versions of these this rare character for use outside of Wenlin in other word processing programs, and maybe we'll try that as an exercise in a future experimental video. At any rate, I hope you enjoyed seeing some of the powerful features of the CDL editor. And in closing, this is Richard Cook for Wenlin Institute. Enjoy CDL. It's great fun.